The morning sun cast long shadows across Camp Pendleton as Sergeant Jake Parker led his Marines through their daily training routine. The sound of boots hitting dirt mixed with shouted commands and the crack of rifles at the firing range. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead and checked his watch. Another normal Tuesday in Southern California, 200 miles above Earth's surface. Something extraordinary was happening. The sleek silver hull of the Zephyrian observation vessel, Celestial Observer, hung in the void, its sensors pointed down. At the blue marble below, inside the ship's main observation deck, Ambassador Crixtal studied the data streaming across holographic displays. "Fascinating," Crixtal said, his crystalline form shifting colors from deep blue to pale green. "The dominant species appears to be bipedal mammals. How quaint." His aide, a younger Zephyrian named Valenix, manipulated the controls to zoom in. On various human settlements, cities sprawled across continents, tiny vehicles moved along ribbons of concrete. Everywhere the small figures of humans went about their business. "They seem so small," Valenix observed. "The average specimen appears to be less than 2 meters in height. And look at their limbs, so thin and delicate." Crixtal nodded, his internal light pulsing with amusement. "What?" "They remind me of the Quillarian pet creatures my daughter keeps, quite adorable in their own primitive way." The ship's computer chimed softly. "Biological analysis complete," it announced in a melodious tone. "Species designation, human, physical, classification, standard carbon-based bipedal mammal, strength rating, below galactic average, threat assessment, minimal." Ow. On another part of the ship, War Chief Gorvac of the Breakter military contingent reviewed the same data with professional interest. His massive armored form dwarfed the Zephyrians around him, standing nearly 3 meters tall and weighing close to half a ton. Through his helmet's visual display, he watched humans moving about their daily lives. "Pathetic," Gorvac rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "Look at their military installations. Those projectile weapons would barely scratch our ceremonial armor and their vehicles." He gestured dismissively at images of human tanks and aircraft, children's toys. Back on Earth, Jake Parker had no idea he was being watched. He finished the morning drill and dismissed his Marines for chow. As he walked toward the mess hall, he noticed something odd in the sky. A glint of metal that didn't belong to any aircraft he recognized. Sergeant Parker called out Corporal Amy Stevens, jogging up beside him. "You see that thing up there?" Jake squinted at the sky. The object was too far away to make out clearly, but it definitely wasn't moving like any plane or helicopter he knew. Probably just some new experimental aircraft, he said, though something in his gut told him otherwise. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., Captain Lisa Morgan was having a very different kind of morning. The State Department had pulled her from her. Regular duties for a classified briefing that made no sense. Aliens. First contact. Diplomatic protocols for species that weren't human. You're joking. She had said to the briefing officer. "I wish I was, Captain," came the reply. "They've been observing us for 3 days. Our satellites picked up their ship yesterday. They're expected to make official contact within the hour." Lisa sat in the Pentagon's Situation Room, watching. The same displays that Jake had glimpsed from hundreds of miles away. The alien vessel was enormous, easily the size of a city block. It hung in space like a silver cloud, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "What do we know about them?" she asked. "It's not much," admitted General Harrison, the Joint Chief who was running the briefing. "They call themselves the Zephyrian Council. They seem to represent some kind of galactic government. As far as we can tell, they're peaceful. Captain, I need you to understand something important." "Sir, they think we're harmless. Cute even. Their initial communications referred to us as an adorable primitive species that they're eager to help and guide." Lisa felt her jaw clench. She had spent 12 years in the Army, including 2 tours in Afghanistan. She had earned her captains. Bars through blood, sweat, and determination. The idea of being called cute by anyone, even aliens, made her want to punch something. "How exactly do they plan to help us?" she asked. "Technology transfer, medical advances, cultural exchange. They want to bring us into their galactic community as what they call a protected junior species. The words hung in the air like a bad smell. Protected junior species. Lisa had heard similar phrases before, usually from people who thought they knew better than everyone else. Aboard the Celestial Observer, Ambassador Crystal was preparing for his historic first communication with humanity. He had selected what his cultural advisors assured him were the most reassuring and friendly phrases in the human language. Are you certain about the translation?" he asked his linguistics officer. "Absolutely, Ambassador. The humans should find our approach both comforting and appropriately respectful of their primitive nature." Crystal nodded and activated the communication array. His message would be broadcast to every major population center on Earth simultaneously. Wow. It was a moment that would be remembered for all of galactic history. "Greetings, small ones of Earth." His translated voice echoed across the planet. "We are the Zephyrian Council, representatives of the galactic community. We have been observing your adorable little civilization and are pleased to offer our guidance and protection. Do not be frightened by our superior technology and wisdom. Come in peace to help you take your first steps into the larger universe." In the Pentagon Situation Room, Lisa Morgan closed her eyes and counted to 10. Around the world, similar reactions were taking place as humanity heard itself described as small, adorable, and primitive, all in the same sentence. Jake Parker, standing in the California sun, looked up at the silver shape in the sky and felt something stir in his chest. It wasn't fear, it wasn't excitement. It was the same feeling he got when someone underestimated what Marines could do. Sir Corporal Stevens said quietly, "I don't think they know what they're dealing with." Jake smiled grimly. "No," he said, "I don't think they do." Commander Valthera floated through the corridors of the Celestial Observer, her crystalline body pulsing with satisfaction. The initial contact with the humans had gone exactly as predicted. The primitive species had responded with appropriate awe and submission to their superior technology. "Status report," she commanded as she entered the analysis chamber. Science Officer Quintal looked up from his holographic displays. "The humans are fascinating, Commander. It's quite possibly the most endearing species we have encountered. Their brain capacity is surprisingly advanced for such a small creature, but their physical limitations are exactly what we expected." Valthara studied the data streaming across the screens. Images of humans going about their daily activities filled the displays. She watched a human construction site where the tiny bipeds operated their crude machinery. "Look at how they struggle with basic construction," she noted with amusement. "It's those mechanical devices they use to lift building materials. So inefficient. A single Zephyrian could accomplish the same task with our natural energy manipulation abilities." Quintal adjusted the display to show human transportation. "And observe their vehicles, Commander. They require wheels to move across surfaces. They cannot even achieve natural flight like the Breakter, or energy-based movement like ourselves." On the military deck of the ship, War Chief Gorvac was conducting his own analysis with considerably less charm. The massive Breakter warrior stood before tactical displays showing human military installations. His aide, Subcommander Thracial, pointed out various human weapon systems. "Their most advanced aircraft move at barely supersonic speeds," Thracial reported. "Our atmospheric fighters are 10 times faster. Their ground vehicles are primitive, metal shells that fire simple projectiles. I doubt their weapons could penetrate even our lightest ceremonial armor." Gorvac studied images of human soldiers training. He watched them carry equipment that looked impossibly heavy for their small frames, but he knew the weights involved were trivial by galactic standards. "What is the maximum load their soldiers can carry?" he asked. "Approximately 40 to 60 kilograms, War Chief." For comparison, a Breakter juvenile can carry 3 times that amount without mechanical assistance. Gorvac nodded approvingly. "And their physical conditioning?" "Quite impressive for their size, but limited by their biological constraints. Their fastest runners achieve speeds that our elderly could match while walking casually. Their strength training involves moving weights that we would consider light exercise equipment." Back on Earth, the day was progressing normally for most humans, unaware of the detailed scrutiny they were under. In Denver, Colorado, construction worker Danny E. Rodriguez arrived at his job site before dawn. The crew was building a new office complex, and today they needed to move a shipment of concrete blocks from the delivery truck to the foundation area. "Danny, can you grab those blocks from the truck?" called out Foreman Pete Walsh. "Sure thing," Boss Danny replied. He walked over to the truck bed where dozens of concrete blocks sat waiting. Each block weighed about 80 pounds, standard for construction work. Danny grabbed one in each hand and walked them over to the foundation, making easy conversation with his co-workers as he worked. Above the job site, Sverian's scout drone recorded every movement. In the analysis chamber, Quental highlighted the footage for Commander Velthera. "Notice how the human requires both hands to carry what appears to be their basic construction materials," he pointed out. "Each block seems to represent a significant portion of their lifting capacity." Velthera watched Danny make trip after trip, carrying 2 blocks at a time. "How much do those blocks weigh in standard galactic measurements?" "Approximately 36 standard units each. The human is carrying 72 units per trip." "Remarkable endurance for such a small creature," Velthar admitted, though of course a Zephyrian could move the entire shipment with a single energy manipulation. In a high school gymnasium in Texas, 17-year-old Amy Clark was having what she considered a disappointing day in the weight room. Her personal trainer, Coach Martinez, was pushing her to increase her squat numbers for the upcoming state championship. "Come on, Amy," Coach Martinez encouraged. "You did 320 last week. Let's try 330 today." Amy adjusted her grip on the barbell and took a deep breath. 330 pounds. She had been working toward this goal for months. She positioned herself under the bar, lifted it off the rack, and slowly lowered herself into the squat position. The Zephyrian observation drone recorded every moment as Amy drove upward with her legs, successfully completing the lift. "Act the weight," and smiled at her coach. "New personal record," she said, breathing hard but clearly pleased in the Celestial Observer's analysis chamber. This footage generated considerable interest among the science team. "This appears to be some form of physical development ritual," observed junior analyst Morvix. "The young human is manipulating weighted objects as a form of exercise." Quental calculated the weight involved: 150 standard units. Quite impressive for a juvenile specimen. Commander Velthara watched the replay with scientific curiosity. Their species seems to deliberately stress their bodies to promote growth. How primitive, yet oddly effective within their biological limitations. War Chief Gorvak, monitoring the same data from the military section, was less impressed. 150 units is what we use for our children's fitness equipment. This human female appears to be at the peak of her species' physical development. Yet she struggles with what would be a warm-up exercise for a breakthrough adolescent. Meanwhile, the diplomatic preparations continued on both sides. Ambassador Crixtal was reviewing cultural protocols with his staff, preparing for the formal first meeting with human representatives. Remember, he instructed his diplomatic team, these are a very young species. We must be patient with their primitive customs and limited understanding. Think of them as talented children who need gentle guidance. His cultural advisor Yin Tel added, "Our xenobiologists confirm that humans respond well to positive reinforcement and simple explanations. We should avoid overwhelming them with complex galactic concepts." On Earth, Captain Lisa Morgan was receiving her own briefing about alien customs and expectations. The information coming from the alien ship suggested they viewed humanity as a species in need of protection and guidance. "They keep using words like small and primitive," she noted to General Harrison. "Are we certain about their intentions?" "Everything indicates they're benevolent," the general replied. "They seem to genuinely want to help us advance. Though I admit their attitude is somewhat condescending." Lisa reviewed the transcripts of alien communications. Every message contained references to humanity's charming limitations and adorable attempts at civilization. It was like being patted on the head by a well-meaning adult as the day progressed. Both sides prepared for their first face-to-face meeting, carrying assumptions about the other that would soon prove to be dramatically wrong. The Nevada desert had never hosted anything like the Zephyrian embassy before. Within hours of the aliens choosing the location, military engineers had constructed a basic facility to house the first formal cultural exchange between Earth and the galactic community. The temporary buildings looked tiny compared to the massive alien shuttle that had landed nearby. Captain Lisa Morgan stood at the entrance to the main meeting hall, watching as the first group of alien dignitaries emerged. From their transport, the Zephyrians moved with fluid grace, their crystalline bodies catching the desert sunlight and throwing rainbow patterns across the sand. Behind them came the Breaker delegation, their heavy armor making deep impressions in the ground with each step. "Remember," General Harrison said quietly beside her, "they think they're doing us a favor. Try to stay diplomatic, no matter what they say." Lisa nodded, though she felt her jaw tighten as Ambassador Crystal approached. The alien's translator device made his voice sound warm and friendly, but his words carried the same condescending tone she had heard in all their previous communications. "Greetings, small ones," Crystal said, his form shifting to a pleasant blue color. "We are honored to begin this cultural exchange with your charming little species. Please do not be intimidated by our presence. We are here to help guide you toward a more civilized existence." "Thank you for coming," Lisa replied, fighting to keep her voice neutral. "We're eager to learn about galactic civilization." The aliens had prepared an impressive demonstration of their technology. In the main hall, they had set up displays of their most advanced equipment. Gravity manipulators that could make objects float through the air, energy shields that shimmered like soap bubbles, matter synthesizers that could create complex objects. From basic elements, Dr. Helen Brooks, Earth's lead xenobiologist, moved through the displays with scientific fascination. She had spent her entire career studying life on Earth, but here were beings that had evolved under completely different conditions. As she observed the aliens interacting with their technology, she began to notice interesting details. The Zephyrians controlled their equipment through what appeared to be natural energy manipulation. They could make objects move by simply focusing their attention on them. But when Helen watched closely, she realized they struggled with anything that weighed more than a few pounds. "Fascinating," she murmured, making notes on her tablet. "Ambassador Crystal, could you demonstrate how your gravity manipulator works?" Crystal was happy to show off. He activated the device and used his natural abilities to lift a metal sphere about the size of a basketball. The sphere floated gracefully through the air, spinning slowly as it moved. "This sphere weighs approximately 50 standard units," Crystal explained proudly. "It represents the maximum load our gravity manipulators can handle efficiently." Helen did quick calculations in her head. 50 standard units translated to about 23 kilograms. It's just over 50 pounds. She had seen her nephew's high school football team lift more than that during warm-up exercises. Meanwhile, War Chief Gorvak was preparing his own demonstration. The massive Breaker warrior had brought what he considered to be an impressive display of military might. His aide, Subcommander Thrakiel, activated a holographic projector that showed images of Breaker combat capabilities. "Observe the strength of a fully equipped Breaker warrior," Gorvak announced, his voice booming through his helmet speakers. "This footage shows our heavy assault troops in action." The hologram displayed Breaker soldiers in full battle armor moving across an alien battlefield. They carried weapons that fired beams of energy and moved with surprising speed despite their size. But what caught the attention of the watching humans was a sequence showing a Breaker warrior lifting what appeared to be a heavy piece of equipment. Marine Lieutenant Ben Carter, who had been assigned to observe the alien military demonstrations, studied the footage carefully. Something about it bothered him, though he could not immediately identify what. War Chief Gorvak Ben said, "That piece of equipment your soldier is lifting, what does it weigh?" Gorvak's chest swelled with pride. 2,000 standard units. It represents the peak of Breakdoor physical capability. Only our strongest warriors can achieve such feats of strength. Ben did the math quickly. 2,000 standard units was roughly 900 kilograms, about 2,000 pounds. It was impressive, but something about the way the Breakdoor in the footage moved suggested he was straining to his absolute limit. The cultural exchange continued throughout the day. The aliens showed off their medical technology, their transportation systems, and their communication networks. Everything was presented with the same attitude of adults showing toys to children. Your species has such potential, Velthera told Dr. Brooks during a break in the presentations. With our guidance, you could advance beyond your current primitive state within just a few generations. What do you consider primitive about our current development? Helen asked, genuinely curious. Many things, Velthera replied kindly. Your reliance on mechanical devices for basic tasks, your inability to manipulate energy directly, your limited physical capabilities. But do not worry, these are natural limitations for a young species. Helen nodded politely, but privately. She was beginning to form a very different picture of galactic civilization. The aliens were undoubtedly advanced in many ways, but their casual dismissal of human capabilities seemed based on incomplete information. Later that afternoon, aliens decided to demonstrate what they considered their most impressive technology. War Chief Gorvac had brought a piece of Breakter military equipment he was particularly proud of. A powered exoskeleton designed to enhance a warrior's natural strength. This device, Gorvac explained as he stepped into the mechanical suit, amplifies Breakter's strength by a factor of 3. It represents the pinnacle of our military engineering. The exoskeleton was an impressive piece of technology, all gleaming metal and articulated joints. Once Gorvac was fully suited up, he moved to demonstrate its capabilities. Watch carefully, he said, approaching a piece of test equipment that had been prepared for the demonstration. It was a block of dense metal, roughly the size of a small car. This block weighs 5,000 standard units. Without technological assistance, no biological creature in the galaxy could move it. Gorvac activated the exoskeleton's power systems. Motors, wind, and hydraulics hissed as the suit came to life. He bent down, grabbed the metal block, and slowly, with obvious effort, lifted it off the ground. The watching aliens gasped in appreciation. The humans applauded politely. Gorvac held the block for several seconds before carefully setting it. Back down. 5,000 standard units, he repeated, breathing heavily inside his armor. The absolute peak of enhanced biological strength. Ben Carter made notes on his pad. 5,000 standard units translated to roughly 2¼ tons. It was an impressive lift, but the Breakter had needed a powered exoskeleton to accomplish it, and even then, he had clearly been straining. As the day's demonstrations came to an end, both sides prepared for the formal diplomatic dinner that would conclude the cultural exchange. The aliens were pleased with how well the primitive humans had responded to their displays of superior technology. The humans were polite and appreciative, though several of them seemed to be thinking very hard about what they had witnessed. Dr. Helen Brooks sat in her temporary office, reviewing her notes from the day. The more she studied the aliens' capabilities, the more convinced she became that something important was being overlooked by both sides. She picked up her phone and dialed a number in Washington. General Harrison, it's Helen. I think we need to run some tests before tomorrow's meetings. I have a theory about our new friends that you need to hear. The second day of cultural exchange was supposed to be a peaceful visit to the embassy by a group of local school children. Mrs. Patterson's 3rd grade class from Las Vegas had won a contest to meet the alien visitors, and 28 excited 8-year-olds climbed off the school bus that morning, chattering about spaceships and aliens. Captain? Lisa Morgan watched the children line up for their tour, remembering her own excitement at that age when her father had taken her to see jets. At an air show? She hoped this would be a simple, happy visit that would help both species understand each other better. Kevin Walsh bounced on his toes near the front of the line, his backpack stuffed with questions he had written down the night before. The teacher had told the class they could ask the aliens anything they wanted. Kevin had filled 3 pages with curiosities about space travel, alien food, and whether aliens had pets. Remember, children, Mrs. Patterson called out, use your indoor voices, and keep your hands to yourselves, unless the aliens say it's okay to touch something. The tour began in the main display hall, where the aliens had set up their most impressive technology for the children to see. Ambassador Crickstal had insisted on personally guiding the young humans, finding their excitement absolutely delightful. Welcome, small ones, Crickstal said, his form glowing a warm yellow color. Today you will see wonders beyond your tiny imaginations. The children gasped as Crickstal demonstrated the gravity manipulator, making colorful spheres dance through the air. They laughed when Volthara created little animals out of light with her energy projectors. Everything was going perfectly until they reached the final display. In the center of the room sat what the aliens called a gravity stabilizer. It was about the size of a microwave oven, made of some kind of crystal that pulsed with internal light. The device was worth more than most planets produced in a year, and it was crucial to keeping the alien embassy stable in Earth's gravity field. This device, explained Science Officer Quental, maintains artificial gravity conditions that allow us to function comfortably on your world. It is irreplaceable and extremely delicate. Kevin Walsh raised his hand. How does it work? Internal crystals vibrate at precisely calibrated frequencies, Quental began, launching into a technical explanation that lost most of the children within seconds. Kevin nodded politely, but his attention drifted to the crystal device itself. It was pretty, with all those swirling lights inside. Without really thinking about it, he stepped closer to get a better look. Kevin, Mrs. Patterson called softly. Remember what we said about staying with the group? Kevin took a step back, but as he did, his backpack caught on the edge of the display pedestal. Gravity stabilizer wobbled dangerously as Kevin tried to untangle himself. Careful, child, Quental said, reaching out to steady the device, but Kevin was already pulling free, and his sudden movement sent the gravity stabilizer tumbling off its pedestal. The priceless device hit the floor with a sound like breaking. Bells and several of the internal crystals cracked with tiny lightning flashes. The room fell completely silent. Every alien present stared at the broken device in horror. Quental made a sound like escaping gas. Ambassador Crystal's colors shifted rapidly from yellow to deep red. Oh no, Kevin whispered, his face going pale. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Silence stretched for another few seconds before chaos erupted. Alien voices filled the air, some speaking in their own languages, others using translators that made urgent beeping sounds. Within minutes, security personnel were rushing into the room. Sub-Commander Thrakiel was the first to arrive, his heavy armor clanking as he moved. Behind him came a squad of Breaktor warriors in full combat gear, the sight of 8 foot tall. Armored aliens with glowing weapons caused several children to start crying. What happened here? Thrakiel demanded, his voice booming through his helmet speakers. The human child damaged the gravity stabilizer, Quental reported, his form flickering with distress. The device is completely non-functional. Captain, Lisa Morgan stepped forward, placing herself between the alien soldiers and the frightened children. It was an accident. The boy didn't mean any harm. Accident or not, Thrakiel said, this device cannot be replaced. Its value exceeds the total economic output of most civilized worlds. Mrs. Patterson gathered her students behind her, trying to keep them calm, while Lisa faced down the alien military commander. The situation was spiraling out of control rapidly. We understand the device was valuable, Lisa said, keeping her voice steady. Earth will make appropriate compensation for the damage. Thrakiel's laugh was like grinding metal. Compensation? Your entire primitive world could not produce enough wealth to replace what has been destroyed. This act of vandalism demands immediate justice. War Chief Gorvac arrived with additional troops, and the room filled with armed aliens. The children pressed closer to their teacher as the aliens discussed what to do about Kevin in voices that grew more threatening by the HEE minute. The child must be taken into custody, Gorvac declared. He will face trial under Galactic law for destruction of irreplaceable technology. Absolutely not, Lisa replied firmly. He's 8 years old. It was an accident. Age is irrelevant, Thrakiel said. The damage is done. Primitive species must learn that actions have consequences. The aliens began activating their equipment. Energy shields hummed to life around the embassy. Weapons powered up with ominous whining sounds. Communication arrays extended from the alien shuttle as they called for reinforcements. We are declaring this embassy under siege protocols, Gorvac announced. No human leaves until the child is surrendered for trial. Outside the building, more alien forces were deploying. Dr. Helen Brooks watched from her office window as Breaktor warriors took positions around the perimeter. Their weapons were trained on the embassy entrances, and their heaviest equipment was being moved into place. This is not how first contact was supposed to go, General Harrison said over her radio, through her binoculars. Helen could see the aliens positioning their most intimidating piece of military hardware. The Dominator hover tank settled into place in front of the main entrance, its weapons system cycling through power-up sequences. The tank was massive, easily 40 tons of alien military engineering. It floated 3 feet off the ground on anti-gravity generators, and every surface bristled with energy weapons and sensors. It was designed to end conflicts before they started through sheer intimidation factor. Inside the embassy, Kevin Walsh was crying softly as armed aliens surrounded the group of humans. His classmates huddled together, too scared to make any noise. Mrs. Patterson held them protectively while Captain Lisa Morgan tried to negotiate with beings who seemed determined to make an example of a frightened child. "Please," Kevin said. Through his tears, "I said I was sorry. I didn't mean to break it. Sorry does not repair irreplaceable technology." Thrakiel replied coldly. "You will come with us now." The alien commander reached out to grab Kevin, but Lisa stepped in his way. "Over my dead body," she said quietly. The standoff was complete. Armed aliens faced a handful of humans and 28 terrified children. Outside, the Dominator tank powered up its main weapons, ready to demonstrate the overwhelming might of galactic civilization. What none of the aliens realized was that Sergeant Jake Parker had been watching the entire situation develop from his position at the perimeter. He had seen the tank move into position. He'd heard the radio chatter about human hostages and alien demands. And Jake Parker was getting very tired of being told what humans could and could not do. Sergeant Jake Parker walked through the alien security perimeter like it was not even there. The Breaker guards noticed him approaching but paid little attention. After all, what could one small human do against their overwhelming show of force? Inside the embassy, the standoff had grown more tense. Subcommander Thrakiel had given the humans a final ultimatum. Either they handed over Kevin Walsh immediately, or the aliens would take him by force and consider Earth a hostile planet. "Have 60 seconds to comply," Thrakiel announced. His weapons powering up with threatening hums, Captain Lisa Morgan stood protectively in front of the crying children, her mind racing through options that all led to disaster. Behind her, Mrs. Patterson whispered comfort to her terrified students. Kevin Walsh sat on the floor, his small shoulders shaking with sobs. 30 seconds, Thrakiel continued. The main door to the embassy opened quietly. Jake Parker stepped inside, moving with the casual confidence of someone who belonged there. The aliens barely glanced at him. Another harmless human to add to their collection of hostages. 15 seconds, Thrakiel said. Jake surveyed the scene calmly. Armed aliens, surrounding scared children, weapons pointed at civilians. A little boy being threatened for an innocent accident. Everything about the situation made his blood boil, but his expression remained perfectly controlled. "Time is up," Thrakiel declared. "Stand aside, human female, or we will move you aside." "Excuse me, Jake," said in a conversational tone. The aliens turned toward him with mild irritation. Subcommander Thrakiel's helmet amplified his annoyed sigh. "Another primitive attempting to interfere," Thrakiel said to his troops. "Remove this one as well." 2 Breaker warriors started toward Jake, but he raised his hand in a stopping gesture. "Before you do anything stupid," Jake said calmly, "I want to show you something. You all keep talking about strength and power and how superior you are too. Us cute little humans," or Chief Gorvac, pushed past his subordinates. "Silence, primitive. Your time for speaking is over." Jake smiled, and something in that smile made Captain Lisa Morgan take a step back. She had seen that expression before, usually right before someone made a very serious mistake. "See, that's the problem," Jake continued, ignoring the weapons. Pointed at him. "You keep calling us weak. You keep talking about your amazing strength. But I've been watching your demonstrations, and I think you might have the wrong idea about who's strong and who's not." "You dare question Breaker superiority?" Thrakiel snarled. "I'm not questioning anything," Jake replied. "I'm about to show you exactly what a human can do." He walked past the surprised aliens toward the main entrance. Through the transparent doors, everyone could see the massive Dominator tank positioned outside. 40 tons of alien military might, bristling with weapons, hovering on anti-grav generators that hummed with barely contained power. That's your biggest, scariest weapon out there, right? Jake asked conversationally. Gorvak straightened with pride. The Dominator represents the pinnacle of breakthrough military engineering. No force in the galaxy can stand against it. Jake nodded thoughtfully. 40 tons, you said yesterday? Anti-gravity suspension. It's weapons that could level a city block. A really impressive piece of equipment. Indeed, Gorvak rumbled. And completely invulnerable to any primitive human technology. You're probably right about that, Jake agreed, pushing open the embassy doors. But here's the thing about us primitive humans. We don't always rely on technology. He stepped outside into the Nevada sunshine. The Dominator tank loomed in front of him, its weapons tracking his movement automatically. The alien crew inside probably considered him no more threatening than an insect. Jake walked up to the massive vehicle and placed. The metal was warm from the desert heat and vibrated slightly from the internal machinery. This is impressive, he called back to the aliens who had followed him outside. Really well built. I bet your engineers are proud of this. Starakiel gestured impatiently. Enough of this foolishness. Return inside immediately. You know what I think? Jake said, his hands still resting on the tank's surface. I think you people have been underestimating humans from the very beginning. Without any visible effort, without any straining or preparation, Jake simply lifted the 40-ton tank over his head. The anti-gravity generators, suddenly supporting nothing, screamed in mechanical confusion. Alarms began blaring from inside the vehicle as its crew tried to understand why they were airborne. Jake held the massive war machine above him like it was made of cardboard, not even breathing hard. Holy shit, someone whispered. Lisa Morgan realized with distant surprise that it had been her. Every alien present stood frozen in shock. Their most powerful weapon, their symbol of overwhelming military superiority, was being casually held aloft by a single human who was not even sweating. Jake looked at the stunned aliens with mild curiosity. What's wrong? I thought you said this thing was heavy. War Chief Gorvak made a sound like a broken machine. His translator gave up trying to process it and simply emitted random beeps. Ambassador Crystal S. Color shifted rapidly through the entire spectrum before settling on a pale, shocked white. This is impossible, he whispered. Is it? Jake asked. He adjusted his grip slightly, spinning the tank in the air like a basketball. Because it feels pretty light to me. From the crowd of watching humans, Amy Clark stepped forward. She had been observing the alien standoff from behind the security barriers, but now she walked calmly into the open area. She called out, "You want me to throw it for you?" The casual offer to hurl a 40-ton tank like a javelin sent the alien forces into complete panic. Emergency sirens began wailing from their ships. Troops who had been confidently surrounding the embassy were now backing away in terror. Jake gently lowered the Dominator back to the ground, making sure not to damage it. The anti-gravity generators caught the weight again with obvious relief. "There you go," he said pleasantly to the tank crew. "Good as new." He turned back to the assembled aliens, who were still standing in various states of shock. "Now then," Jake said, his voice taking on a harder edge, "I believe you were threatening some children over an accident. Would you like to reconsider that position?" Commander Threkiel tried to speak, but only managed a strangled whimpering sound. War Chief Gorvak slowly sank to his knees, his massive armor clanking against the concrete. The being who had been so proud of lifting 2 tons with technological assistance had just watched a human casually manipulate 20 times that amount with his bare hands. How Ambassador Crystal managed to ask, Jake shrugged. "We're human. This is what we do." Dr. Helen Brooks jogged up to the group, her tablet computer in hand and her face bright with scientific excitement. "I knew it," she said breathlessly. "I've been running calculations all night. Earth's gravity is 3 times what these species evolved in. Our bone density, muscle fiber, everything about us is adapted to forces they can barely imagine." She turned to the aliens, who were still staring at Jake in horrified fascination. "You've been calling us weak," she continued, "but that's like An ant calling an elephant weak because it can't fit through tiny holes. We're not weak. We're gravity-adapted powerhouses, and you just never bothered to run the numbers. Jake walked back toward the embassy entrance, where Kevin Walsh was peeking. Around Captain Morgan's legs, with wide, curious eyes. "How are you doing, buddy?" Jake asked the boy gently. "Are you really strong enough to pick up a tank?" Kevin asked in amazement. Jake smiled. "We all are, kid. That's just what humans do." He looked back at the aliens, his expression growing serious. "Again. Now about that apology, you owe a little boy for scaring him over an accident." 3 hours after Jake Parker lifted the tank, the Nevada embassy had transformed into something resembling a galactic crisis center. Ships from 12 different alien species had arrived in Earth's orbit, their crews demanding to see proof of what their sensors had recorded. Ambassador Crystal sat in what had once been his position of authority, but now looked more like a defendant's chair. His crystalline form had shifted to a pale, embarrassed blue as he tried to explain to the Galactic Council how he had managed to completely misunderstand an entire species. "The humans were polite," he said weakly into his communication device. "They seemed so small and delicate. How were we supposed to know they were the galactic equivalent of living siege engines?" Dr. Helen Brooks stood before a wall of holographic displays, explaining human biology to a gathering of the galaxy's leading scientists. Every few minutes, one of them would ask her to repeat something, as if they could not believe what they were hearing. "Earth's gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared," she explained for the 5th time. "Your species evolved in gravity fields, averaging 3.2 meters per second squared. For humans, existing in your environments would be like living on the moon." A Quillarian biologist raised a tentacle. "But surely there must be limits to their physical capabilities." Helen smiled and gestured toward the window, where Danny Rodriguez was helping the alien engineers repair their damaged equipment. He was casually carrying metal beams that their mechanical lifters could barely handle. "Yesterday you saw one of our high school students lift 150 kilograms, Helen continued. "That's not exceptional for a human her age. Our Olympic weightlifters can lift over 250 kilograms. Our strongest humans can lift over 500 kilograms without mechanical assistance." The alien scientists made various sounds of distress in their measurement system. 500 kilograms translated to numbers that broke their understanding of biological possibility. Meanwhile, Kevin Walsh had become the most famous 8-year-old in galactic history. News services from across the galaxy were calling him the boy who broke the universe's understanding of physics. Kevin himself was handling the attention exactly as any normal kid would. "Can I have a pet alien?" he asked his mother for the 10th time that day. War Chief Gorvac had undergone what could only be described as a complete philosophical transformation. The proud breakter warrior who had spent decades building his reputation as one of the galaxy's strongest beings was now following Jake Parker around like a devoted student. "Show me again how you lifted the vehicle," Gorvac requested humbly. Jake sighed. This was the 15th time Gorvac had asked the same question. "It's not a technique, Chief. I just picked it up. Same way you'd pick up a book or a cup." "But the weight," Gorvac protested. "The mass displacement calculations alone should make it impossible for biological tissue to generate sufficient force." "Maybe," Jake said patiently, "but you're forgetting that we've been doing impossible things our whole lives. Every time we walk, we're fighting gravity that would crush most of your people. Every time we run, we're generating forces that would break alien bones. This is just normal for us." Captain Lisa Morgan was dealing with the diplomatic fallout. From the morning's events, representatives from every major galactic government wanted to renegotiate humanity's status immediately. The protected junior species classification had been thrown out so fast it had left scorch marks. "We propose immediate full membership in the Galactic Council," declared the Vorthan ambassador, a being that looked like a walking tree, with voting rights equivalent to the founding species. Furthermore, added the Centaurian delegate, "we formally apologize for any condescending language in our previous communications. We were clearly operating under false assumptions about human capabilities." Lisa found herself in the strange position of accepting apologies from beings she had been trying not to offend just hours earlier. The galaxy's entire power structure was reshuffling itself around the revelation that Earth was inhabited by walking weapons of mass destruction. Sub-Commander Thrakiel had requested permission to train with human Marines. When Jake had asked him why, the huge alien had quietly admitted that watching humans made him feel developmentally challenged. Your basic military exercises, Thrakiel explained, generate more force than our heavy weapons training. I watched your Marines doing something called push-ups. The gravitational resistance they were overcoming would serve as advanced strength conditioning for our elite troops. Ben Carter, who had been assigned to oversee alien-human military exchanges, was still trying to wrap his head around the new reality. So when we've been showing you our equipment and talking about our capabilities, Ben said slowly, you've been thinking of us as children playing with toys? Potentially, yes, Thrakiel admitted. We assumed your weapons were proportionally scaled for your size and strength. We did not realize that what we considered normal human strength was physically impossible by galactic standards. Amy Clark had become the poster child for human physical fitness. Alien sports scientists were studying footage of her workouts like ancient texts that held the secrets of the universe. This human female, announced Dr. Vextar, the galaxy's leading authority on physical performance, routinely performs exercises that would hospitalize our Olympic champions. Her casual warm-up routine exceeds the maximum safe stress limits. For every known species, Amy herself found the whole situation amusing. It's just weight training, she told the gathering of alien scientists. My little brother can do most of this stuff. The revelation about human children's capabilities had sent another shockwave through galactic society. Kevin Walsh was not an exceptional human child. He was a completely normal 8-year-old who happened to live on a planet where the gravity was strong enough to forge beings of incredible power. By sunset, the formal agreements were in place. Earth would join the Galactic Council as a full member with immediate effect. Human strength would become a new standard of measurement, with one human unit representing what most species considered impossible feats of power. But more importantly, the galaxy had learned something valuable about assumptions and first impressions. Ambassador Crystal approached Jake Parker as the day's meetings were ending. The alien's form had shifted to a warm, respectful gold color. Sergeant Parker, Crystal said formally, I owe you and your species a profound apology. We allowed our technological superiority to blind us to your remarkable capabilities. Jake nodded acceptingly. No harm done, Ambassador. But maybe next time, try asking before you assume you know what someone can do. Indeed, Crystal agreed, though I confess, I am curious about one thing. What's that? If your everyday strength is so remarkable, what are your actual warriors capable of? Jake smiled, thinking of the Special Forces teams, the Navy SEALs, the Rangers, and all the other elite soldiers he had served alongside. Okay, Ambassador, he said, you really don't want to find out. As the alien ships prepared to depart Earth's orbit, carrying news of humanity's true nature back to their home worlds, one fact had become crystal clear throughout the galaxy. Humans were not cute. They were not primitive. They were not weak. They were the gentlest giants the universe had ever seen, and the galaxy was very glad they had chosen to be friends.